we looked in possibly that this could be a revenge type murder, to where if Liz did confront Oscar, or if Oscar had told this woman, hey, my family's found out about it, my daughter-in-law confronted me about it, I have to break off this relationship, then they possibly might want payback, or get revenge on that. So that was one of the many angles I looked at as a possible motive for this murder.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just set it up really quickly so it doesn't just cut to us on the phone. So we've got Detective Sergeant Michael Ritchie. That's the correct rank, right?
Correct, Sergeant.
Sergeant
Yeah.
Michael Ritchie. Back for a couple more questions because last time we spoke, you had to go and you gave us such a great long interview. I feel like you were extremely generous with your time. But we still had a few more things because you did touch on something in particular that I think has come up a couple times just in the public eye with this case, and we wanted to kind of return to it. It all has to do with Sergio, sort of, and his family. And you had told us how extensively you've already looked into Sergio and that you have an ongoing dialogue with him as this case continues to develop and new things come up. You've returned to him to ask further questions, and he's been cooperative. But one of the things that you brought up was there had been some questions around his father, I think, and without me kind of setting the table, can you just explain a little bit more about that element and what came up there, what was interesting, and what did you look into?
So, during my investigation, again, this occurred on a Friday. Monday morning, I believe, a few days after the murder, I went to Liz's workplace, Rosen, and I interviewed all of her fellow employees. And I believe I interviewed a total of 5 employees. Her kind of her best friend at the company, her former supervisor, then her current supervisor, and then 2 or 3 other employees that she worked with in that little, what I call, fishbowl that she worked. So one thing that led me to start looking into Oscar, Sergio's father, Liz's father-in-law, was 2 things that were bothering Liz before she was killed. Both had to do with him. One was that they had discovered, and I believe it was Sergio's mother suspected or discovered, that Oscar was having an affair. What I was told is that she had told her coworkers that they had found the wife of Oscar, Sergio's mother, had found condoms in his truck. And so she suspected him of, having an affair and cheating on her. So that was something that was bothering Liz. And it's always been a debate, and it's not 100% known whether Liz ever confronted Oscar about the affair. I've heard things that possibly she did, but originally, talking to Sergio, they decided to not, because they didn't want it to affect his job. And they didn't want a strained relationship with his father. They didn't want the father getting mad at Sergio and then firing Sergio, and then therefore he didn't have a job, didn't have income. So I was told by Sergio they left it alone. Liz's parents never were told by Liz that she confronted Oscar about the affair. So there's no proof that she did. And then, of course, Oscar said that he didn't, but Oscar also lied to me as well. The other thing that was bothering, and I'm going to get to Oscar a little bit more, but the other thing that was bothering, the second item that was bothering Liz that she talked to her coworkers about, is that one of their, I don't know if it was the last paycheck, the most previous paycheck before she was murdered, or it might have been, it was very recent though, that Sergio's paycheck had bounced that his father had given him. And so she was very upset about this because that caused financial issues for them. And it wasn't the first time that this had happened. It had happened previously, and actually Sergio and Liz had to use money out of their own account to cover some of the employees' checks that had also bounced. So those were the 2 things that were bothering Liz before she was murdered, and both of them had to do with Oscar. Now, in an investigation, when you are interviewing, whether it's a suspect or witness or someone that you possibly think could be involved, and you know they're lying to you, I've always asked myself, are they lying to me because they had something to do with this murder, or are they lying to me because they're trying to cover up something else they're involved in and they don't want me or other people to know? A common thing is that, someone that's a drug dealer, and they're not involved in the murder, but they're a drug dealer. And so they're denying that they're involved in drugs, or that they're denying that they were there to sell the complainant drugs or something like that. That's a very common lie I get in my past investigations.
Right.
So I was able to, I guess not catch, but able to definitely identify a lie that Oscar had told me. When I interviewed Oscar, I did ask him, hey, did Liz ever confront you about this affair? And he said no. And again, I still can't confirm if that ever happened or not. But I asked him because I thought this could possibly have been, we looked in possibly that this could be a revenge type murder, to where if Liz did confront Oscar, or if Oscar had told this woman, hey, my family's found out about it, my daughter-in-law confronted me about it, I have to break off this relationship, then they possibly might want payback, or get revenge on that. So that was one of the many angles I looked at as a possible motive for this murder. When I spoke to Oscar about the affair, he admitted to it, but what he told me was that he pretty much paid for it. It was like a prostitute. There was no relationship there, and that he didn't even know her name, and that was it. It was just sex. It was just money for sex, and that was it. Later on, when Margarita, Sergio's mother, Oscar's wife, now ex-wife, when she got a private investigator to follow him and look into him, they were able to find that he was having several relationships, and it wasn't just prostitutes. He actually had girlfriends that he was meeting, that he was eating dinner with, that he was buying things for, he was shopping, getting them groceries, and it was an ongoing relationship with actually several women. So he lied to me in the fact that he told me it was just like a prostitute. So therefore I'm asking myself again, did he lied to me because he didn't want me and his family knowing about his affairs? Or did he lie to me because he did have something to do with it? Or possibly one of his jealous girlfriends, did this and it had to do with him. So that was, and really out of all my investigation and out of all the people I've interviewed, I've not really been able to catch or confirm other people lying to me. Like Sergio, he's maybe said some things that have maybe kind of changed, and I don't know if that has to do with memory, but there hasn't been anything that was really like I did with Oscar, that there was something where he told me, no, I was here at this time, and then all of a sudden he changes it and says, no, I was at this location. Like him being at the Lowe's, when he got the call, things like that. Like
right.
All of a sudden it wasn't like, oh no, I wasn't at Lowe's, I was at my friend's house. Nothing like that has happened with Oscar. I've not been, or with Sergio, I've not been able to catch him in any lies. Whereas Oscar completely 100% lied to me, and I was able to identify that and confirm that after I was forwarded the information that the private investigator found once he started following and looking into Oscar's, behavior and what he was doing in his off time. So during my investigation, my top two suspects that I did investigate and look into were Sergio and Oscar. They again were the most suspicious, and again, like I said too, I was lied to by Oscar. And then of course, in a situation like this, when it looks like it's a possible murder for hire, or that she was targeted, it wasn't robbery motivated, you're going to look into the husband in these situations. So during my investigation, those two, and I've said this to different media outlets and different interviews I've had, that it's it's no mystery, and I'm not hiding the fact that they were, two of my main suspects that I did focus my investigation on, definitely during the beginning.
Yeah, I do that. So thank you so much for explaining that. I think that definitely helps us understand a little bit more about the Oscar angle. You did bring up something though that I think is something I wanted to ask you about anyway. So it sounds like you're saying Sergio has been very forthcoming and you've never at least caught him in an outright lie. But we have heard from some of the people that have watched our coverage of this so far who are saying that they believe Sergio's changed his story on a couple of these things, just at least in the press or in public statements he's made. And one of them that people seem to really want clarity on, and I don't know if you can help us with it or not, is what time the signs would have gone up for that garage sale. If they went up the night before, if they went up that morning. It seems like there seems to be a perception that Sergio has had trouble either remembering or has changed that story. Did you experience that at all in talking with him, or is there any light you can shed on that?
Yeah, I've heard people talk about that, and I can't remember a time where I've seen an interview with him, because there's been a lot of different interviews that's been done with me, with the Nellies, with Sergio. So I can't say I've seen all of his interviews, but I know he's done a bunch that I haven't seen, that other people have. Mm-hmm. But if I remember correctly, he told me that him and Liz did put out signs like the night before. Right. It wasn't that morning, because I watched that morning. Liz got up first and she went to Starbucks, got a coffee, came back. Then Sergio got up, and then they kind of set up the garage sale together. And then he left and headed to the Lowe's to go meet his father and his coworkers to head to a job. So definitely, I watched that morning several hours prior to as well. So definitely it wasn't done. The signs weren't set up that morning, and it was set up the night before. And I believe that's what he originally told me. So, and I really can't place anything that I've seen to where he's told other outlets or other media personnel or people that he put them out in the morning instead of the night before.
Got it. There's some other. Oh, go ahead, Miles.
Odd. One thing that was odd, I'll tell you all this, was that when we did a piece with Nancy Grace, and that it was brought up to me by several people that watched it, and in the comments, is that I wasn't quite sure why, when he was telling her that he was meeting his coworkers at a construction shop, and we were just like, I wondered too, like, why? Because I was in on that interview. It was it was myself, the Nelly, Sergio, and Nancy Grace. And we were all listening. We were all there. And I was like, why isn't he just saying Lowe's? Why is he saying construction shop? So right. I haven't asked Sergio why he put it in those terms and didn't just say Lowe's. Maybe he thought he couldn't mention a corporate company's name. I don't know. But that was something that's been, kind of like, I guess, something that's, I guess, different than what he's said in the past. But it's not like a lie, but it's just, right. Why are you saying construction shop? Why don't you just say Lowe's? I thought that was odd, but again, it's nothing that's a big red flag.
Right. Can you talk to us for a second? Because I think this is such an important point, and I can tell just from reading the comments that we're getting and how deep everybody has dived on Sergio. And of course, like you said earlier, in these situations, everyone looks at the spouse, right? And so there is a difference, though, between like smoking gun evidence, I guess you would call it, and a lot of circumstantial things where people maybe make small contradictions over the years and how their story plays out in their memory, or they maybe have said some strange things either, the morning of the murder when they're first spoken to by police or later to the press. And I guess maybe the question to you is just kind of, in your experience, how common is it for those things to change and have it be innocuous and just, people say suspicious things or do suspicious things, but maybe there's a reason for it. And we all know that circumstantial evidence doesn't usually get convictions, right? So I guess it's just that there's a lot of smoke around Sergio and some of the things he said and some of the behaviors people have pointed out. And this might be just a good opportunity to just speak on that one more time.
So, and I'll tell this, and if Sergio was watching this and listening to this, I don't have, any problems with that. Him and I have spoken, numerous times. And one thing I want to say again, to reiterate, is that Sergio has never told me no. He's always said yes in anything I've asked for. And he's always been, again, compliant. He's been respectful. He's been polite. He will call me to check in every now and then, or if he has heard something or different things, he'll call me. And when I call him, he answers his phone. So one, I do have, when we, and I don't want to say if, when we solve this, because I believe it's going to take a joint effort with all of us, just like you guys, the public, the Nellies, Sergio, myself, Sheriff's Office, all the different agencies that have helped with this case. When we solve this, and it's not, Sergio, I believe a lot of different people and myself would definitely owe him an apology, because he has taken a lot of heat on this. And again, but I also have told Sergio, and he's always respected the fact that, hey, you are a suspect in this, and you have not been cleared. No one's been cleared. And so another thing too, there's life insurance money out there. Sergio's never asked about it, never asked for it. And right. So again, with that being said, he's been compliant 100%, but Sergio and everybody handles grief differently. And definitely Sergio is different than a lot of people I've interviewed. And so there were a lot of different things that were odd, when I interviewed him and things like that. And over the years, and, I've seen a lot of people when we've had our Crime Stopper press conferences, and when people have interviewed him, I've seen the comments too, that everyone thinks it's him and he's suspicious, and that his emotion, like he's acting like he's crying, but he doesn't have any tears. It's fake. And then now that he's moved on with his life and been remarried and he has a child, that, everyone's saying, they were in cahoots together. He was having an affair, and that, they planned this and things like that. And so, he has definitely taken a lot of heat over the years with this case. And definitely too, whether he's involved and whether he's not involved, he's handled it very well. But where I take it as when he has maybe changed his story or things have become different, to answer your question, I look at it more as just time goes by. You kind of do forget things get a little bit more cloudy, and especially with something like this. I'll give you a perfect example. In my experience as a detective in homicide, there has gone anywhere from 3 to 5 to 4, 6 years have gone by sometimes, where some of my cases have finally gone to trial, to where, I had a case that happened in 2016, and then it finally went to trial in 2022. And so a lot of times your memory and different things can change a little bit, and things can get foggy. Some things you're not going to forget, and that you're going to know exactly. But other things that are maybe not as important to you, over time, you kind of, forget about exactly the specifics about it. So sometimes when you're asked about it again, it could differ from what you said 2 or 3 years ago. So most of the things that Sergio has said, and maybe it's been different from what he said before, I've more chalked that up as just kind of memory lapse, and just things, your memory gets a little bit more cloudy as time goes by. It's been over 6.5 years now since this murder occurred, and it's still, to me, it seems like just yesterday. But it just adds to, like you mentioned it, the suspicious and circumstantial things that are around this case. There's so many different suspicious things. There's so many different circumstantial things when it comes to this case, but there's never been anything that's been some hard proof that has helped us, locate a suspect, or, again, and I think Sergio understands this, but if it is Sergio, if he was involved, there's been nothing that it has been a smoking gun or a red flag that would show proof that he was involved in this. Or if it wasn't him, there's no proof that it was somebody involved in the 501st, where I've gotten many tips and phone calls and emails that, the 501st was, not as a happy-go-lucky organization as it was being painted, that there was a lot of toxic, relationships and a lot of drama in there, and that it could have been somebody from them, or all different types of theories that people have gotten. And it's, again, it just adds to it. It just adds to this case, which just makes it so, I guess, interesting to a lot of people because of just the different suspicious things, the circumstantial things around this case and why it happened and what the motive was. And it's crazy that a lot of times you would think a case that's unsolved, we don't have any video on it. But I mean, we have the whole thing happening in front of us, and it's still not been able to be solved. And I think one thing that we talked about before that I want to reiterate is as the original investigator on this, that's been on this since day one, and that's someone that stays in touch with Sergio and with the Nellies, especially Bob and Rosemary. I stay in touch with them often. It's been very trying for me as a lead investigator that I've not been able to solve this yet. And one comment I get a lot of times when I talk to people about this case when it comes up, they mention, "Oh, they haven't solved that yet." And I always say, when you say they, it's me. No, I haven't solved it yet. And it's a very frustrating thing for me. And someone that, was a detective for 7+ years and having over a 90% clearance rate with all the other cases I worked, it's difficult that this is the case that I'm kind of known for. That one, and I used to say that I can't solve, that I always say now that I haven't solved yet. So it is definitely it just adds to it the frustrating details that go along with this case, just as me as an investigator. And again, so many people like yourselves that I talk to are so enamored and really enthralled with this case because of all the details to it and the whys and hows and that go into it. It just makes it that much more attractive to people to want to listen to and want to look into and want to try to help solve it.
Right. Michael, if we could just go back for a second, just when you were speaking about Sergio's dad, Oscar, and you had mentioned, the possible motivation that you were looking into there with, maybe it was revenge, they were angry for the bringing to the surface about the alleged affair. Did you guys ever look at the possibility, because he was also having some financial problems, that maybe he was looking at the possibility of, there being a financial windfall if Liz met an end?
Yes, 100%. So that was another one of my theories, was that again, it made sense that a check had bounced. We found out later that he was spending money left and right with on different with different family members. He helped out a lot of his children, buying cars, buying houses, and then he had different girlfriends that he was supporting, whether it was through a home, a car, groceries, an apartment, different things like that. He had a lot of money going out, but maybe not enough coming in with his flooring business. So definitely that's something I looked at, to where I felt Sergio and his dad maybe had a good enough relationship at the time to where Oscar could possibly convince Sergio, hey, the business is struggling. You just got all this life insurance money. Can you, loan me a few $100,000, to help, put money back into the business and things like that. So I definitely looked into that and thought that would be a possible motive. But one, I couldn't prove that, Oscar even knew about the life insurance. And when I interviewed Sergio really wasn't 100% about what all the life insurance entailed. And I believe there's a lot of truth to that, because Liz handled all the finances. Liz handled all the bills. He would give her his check. He would get a paper check from his dad, and she would deposit it. So she paid all the bills. She kept track of all the money and all the finances. She was very detailed. I found records that she kept. She was very, what you would call, anal about their money, and she kept count to the penny. And she was the one, too, that she signed up for all the life insurance and all the coverages. And really, that didn't come from Sergio. Bob, Nelly told me that he told her and his son that when you are working for an employer and they offer insurance, you take advantage of it and you get all the insurance you can, whether it's life insurance or whether it's disability insurance, any type of insurance you can get, health insurance. You take advantage of it through an employer, because through an employer you can get a way better deal through them than you could, through personal stuff. So anyways, it wasn't like Sergio was telling Liz, hey, max out your life insurance. There isn't anything like that. She didn't change her life insurance right before the murder. So that was that angle I did look at, but it was difficult to prove because one, Sergio was 100% on the details of it, how much it was. And then therefore, did even Oscar even know it existed? Was that a conversation that Sergio and Oscar ever even had? Did Oscar even know that Liz had, life insurance? And of course, if he did, then he would have to convince his son to give him that money, and so that was kind of a long shot, but something I did look at, but was not able to prove. We did look into his finances, and really, it was pretty basic. It was pretty common. Every week, a lot of money was going in and out of his accounts, but a lot of it was paying his employees. Right. Every Thursday or Friday, whatever it was payday. And so he was getting money out of the bank to pay his guys. And usually it was around the same amount of money each week. There was one thing that the private investigator found, that there was a large check that bounced that he had wrote to a woman. And it was for, I'm trying to remember, it was a large amount of money, like $60,000 around there. But it had bounced, it wasn't cashed. And myself and Detective Wally Wyatt were able to track down that young woman, and we interviewed her. And that was when we went to Miami, and we were able to confirm she had nothing to do with the murder. But it was just a box. What I say all the time when I talk about this, it was a box that we had to check. We had to look into that because that check did bounce shortly. I can't remember if it was before or after the murder, but it was around the time of the murder when that check did bounce. So that was something that we definitely had to look into, and we did, and were able to confirm that, she and the check had nothing to do with the murder of Liz Barraza. Right.
Well, the financial stuff that you mentioned as far as Sergio and Liz's relationship, I mean, that's the same thing that the Nellies told us, that he couldn't even figure out how to close on their house, and that Bob actually had to do all the work for him because Sergio just didn't know how to do the financial stuff. So that does make sense that he might not even be aware of it.
One more thing, Michael, that I wanted to ask you that has sort of come up, and I think it's interesting because I'm positive that this was done, but I think we just didn't discuss it in this level of detail the first time we spoke. But it was about looking into Liz and Sergio's phones, right? And the fact that, their social media came up clean, their bank accounts came up clean, their phones, their emails, everything came up like what you would expect a normal couple to look like, a normal happy couple to look like. And it's like, it almost seems like people just have a hard time believing it. And we're getting comments like, well, did they look at the Snapchat? Was there encrypted messages? Like, we didn't press you that hard on it because we accepted what you said. But was there any of that stuff? I mean, I think people just can't believe they're having a hard time with it.
I can expand on that part.
Sure.
So, for instance, Liz had her phone on her when she was shot. It was recovered by EMS, so no one was able to get with that phone, manipulate that phone before it got to me. And then again, just like I said, Sergio's always been compliant. Sergio told me the passcode. They knew each other's passcodes, and he told it to me. It worked, and so I was able to get to her phone. Shortly after, I think about a week after the murder, Sergio volunteered his phone and gave me his phone. And his passcode was the same as Liz's passcode. They both had the same passcode. And so, one thing on a phone, I can take a physical phone and I can delete texts and pictures and things like that off of it. And if I hand you the phone and you look, you wouldn't be able to see it. But we can download a phone. We can do a phone dump. And it's kind of like a phone, just like a computer has a hard drive. Even though you delete it, it's still there. So not only did I have the actual phones in my hand, but I also did phone dumps, phone downloads on both of their phones. And I even had, and again, a phone download can be very confusing sometimes. There's a lot of information there because there's a lot of stuff on your phone that stays on your kind of hard drive of your phone. And it kind of, the way it gets put, it can be very confusing. So even I had the technicians, the IT guys that did those for me, they looked into it as well. They were very interested in this case. And I also did laptop and computer downloads as well. And after all of that, again, and I looked at the phones and the phone downloads, and again, was not able to find anything on Sergio's phone or Liz's phone that was a red flag or a smoking gun. There was no threats from anybody from the 501st or neighbors or from work on Liz's phone. I read, she was the type, there's some people that delete all their text messages all the time. And then there's other people that have never deleted a text message.
Okay.
She was the type that hadn't deleted a text message, and Sergio as well. And I read every single text message that Liz ever got on that phone. Wow. From every single person, every single one. I went through every single one and read. Not one time did I ever see anything that was like, you know, pardon my language, like, fuck you, bitch, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to kill you, you did this to me, you did that to me. I didn't, you know, no threatening text messages at all to Liz or Sergio. And again, Liz's phone, hey, Sergio, again, if he's a suspect, he could have manipulated his phone. He could have done some things. He had time to do something with it, you know, and delete things off of his phone before he gave it to me. But Liz did not. You know, and Sergio didn't give me her phone. We got it from EMS. It was on her person when she was shot. So I didn't find anything like that. And then I read tons and weeks and weeks and weeks and months of text messages between Sergio and Liz, you know, who were married. And again, same thing. Not one. You know, you can tell sometimes when they were frustrated with each other and arguing with each other, but there definitely wasn't any threats, any name calling, anything like that. You know, I make a joke too. I don't think my wife would like this too much, but I make a joke too, to where it's like, if I ended up dead and, you know, the police officers looking through my phone and saw sometimes arguments between me and her, they'd be like, oh yeah, she killed him. Yeah. You know, so and again, I know all of us, any of us that are married or that have had, you know, relationships, you know, we can all relate to that. Absolutely. Yep. But I didn't see any of that between Liz and Sergio's phone. And again, there wasn't stuff where I looked at, like, let's say text messages, and I'm looking at both their phones at the same time. There wasn't all of a sudden some text messages on Liz's phone that weren't on Sergio's phone, like that he deleted some stuff off. So, like, you know,
that's a good point, because you could cross-check them against each other, right? And you would have, right?
You know, especially the messages between each other, and I didn't see any of that. And then the same thing, there wasn't any evidence of Sergio or Liz speaking to, you know, Liz talking to another man or Sergio talking to another woman. There wasn't anything like that. And I even did research too to try to find if maybe they had what we call, you know, a throwdown phone and things like that. And of course you can have that, but again, I found no evidence that Sergio or Liz had a second phone that they would use to talk to their, you know, side piece or whatever you want to call it, their girlfriend or boyfriend on the side. Again, there was no evidence of that. Looking at all the pictures inside the home, they looked very happy. Again, they were about to go, I believe, on their 5-year anniversary trip to Disney. That's what they were doing the garage sale for, to raise a few more bucks to spend on their trip. Everyone too, they said they seemed like they had the picture book marriage, and they were very happy. And one of Liz's coworkers said that, you know, she was like, when she said when she got married, she would hope to have the relationship that Liz and Sergio had, because she would hear them talk to each other on the phone, and she would hear Liz talk about them. So again, when it came, and so there's some apps, you know, going back to things like that and looking at all the different apps and stuff like that. There's some stuff that you can trace, and there's some stuff that you can not. You got to remember too, some people are looking at this and think about how many apps and how many message apps and how many things have been invented and created since this murder occurred.
Yeah.
This, again, some people I think forget, and sometimes I do too. This thing happened over 6.5 years ago. All right, in 2019. It's now 2025. We're closer to 2026 now. So we're closer to 7 years now. A lot has changed in the phone and technology and app world from 2019 to 2025. And so that's another thing too, to where some people are forgetting how long ago it was. And there's a lot of different stuff that didn't exist then that does now, to where it's definitely, there's a whole lot more stuff out there that definitely in our job where criminals are using these apps to where you can't trace what they were saying and who they're talking to.
Right.
Whereas before it used to be a lot easier because they would just text each other, call each other. Now it's like they use all these, Snapchat, WhatsApp, all these different things that that disappeared. You can't trace back what was said or track what was said or who they're talking to.
Right. Michael, you had mentioned, that while you were conducting the investigation and you were speaking to people about the 501st group, that there was some talk about, hey, it's not this idyllic place, and there are these toxic relationships. Did you look into any of that? Was there anything along those lines that actually got to the point where you were actually interviewing people, and did it connect back with Liz at all?
So yes and no. I'm not, I was given many names, again, many phone calls, emails, tips that came in about the 501st and different people that possibly could be a suspect and be involved. And again, Sergio definitely hasn't been the only suspect that I've looked into, and Oscar, there's been a whole lot more. But the issue with the 501st is that there were some people mentioned, but they definitely, their physical description didn't fit the shooter's description. The big thing, and I think we talked about this the first time, is when I was speaking with one of Liz's coworkers, they mentioned they kind of have what we call an arrest justice statement, to where they just kind of blurt something out where you didn't ask them. But and she really, and I think this was one of the most important things that I feel in the investigation that I believe in to be correct, and I could be wrong, is, she said they had to know about the garage sale. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And then what I found out was that Liz was a creature of habit, and she would arrive at work, within a 10 to 15 minute window at the most. She pretty much arrived at work almost around the same time, given 5 minutes plus or minus. It wasn't like one day she'd show up an hour late, or one day show up an hour early. She was on a pretty good clock, and she would leave her home around the same time every day. What I found out was, if Liz would have been going to work that day, we have video of the suspect vehicle, that Nissan Frontier, coming in there, that they would have been too late. She would have already been gone. She would have already left for work. So I've always hinged my investigation on that this person either knew about the garage sale or was told by someone that knew about it that, hey, she's going to be doing a garage sale. She's going to be outside. She's going to be out in the open. She's going to be exposed. It's going to be an easy target. And this is the time to come. And this is what her husband is driving. Just think the timing was impeccable about when the Nissan Frontier arrived, waited around the corner, waited for Sergio to leave, and then it parked in a certain spot to avoid the Nest doorbell camera that they had. They hid their definitely masked their identity with the clothing that they were wearing, possibly wearing a wig, type of trench coat, possible. We talked about the boots. So I just feel like right then and there, that point right there, that she would have usually, if she was going to work that day, she would have already been gone.
That's so interesting. That's come up between Miles and I, but also we've seen it in the comments a few times. People wondering, maybe they just meant to ring the doorbell. Maybe they thought she was going to walk to her car, but it sounds like the timing would not have worked. So that the garage sale does become significant. Like, it's clearly not an accident.
For instance, again, what they knew what they were doing, and they knew about the house. is, we have video of that vehicle prior to rolling around the neighborhood and probably, scoping out the area and looking for all their different exits of where they can go. Because again, they definitely ended up coming back by the scene after the shooting and then exiting out a different area than where they came from. But, for instance, I've had several murder investigations, homicide investigations, where there's people out in their driveway and someone just stops right in front of the driveway. The driver door is right there, and they get out the driver door and they start shooting. But this person drove past to where they could have stopped right there, walked up and shot. They drove past, turned around, parked on the road away from the front door and the Nest doorbell camera, and approached to where you couldn't see them. I just felt like that was strategic, and they knew that camera was there. And of course, we've never been able to get a license plate. The video is not good enough on the truck, but I bet that most likely there wasn't a plate at all, or it was a fictitious stolen plate, or it had been somehow obscured or altered to where it wouldn't come back to anyone anyways.
Right.
So there was a lot of different planning into this that I feel started with knowing that she wasn't going to work, knowing that she was be by herself, doing a garage sale out in the driveway, exposed and an easy target. Instead of having to go knock on the door to where that camera's there, and you could definitely, if that person knocked on the door, unless they were wearing a mask, we would definitely have a much better description and of who did this, that they had to go knock on that door.
Right. That makes sense. Michael, just in your experience, does the fact, because you mentioned, that a lot of times they would just sort of drive by and start shooting. Does the fact that they walked up, there were some words exchanged, does that, in your experience, speak to some sort of personal connection and them wanting Liz to know that it was them, or that there was a message there, or is that just reading too much into it?
It's possible. You never know. Again, you see different things. A lot of times when it's more personal and they know each other, there's a lot more like arguing or a little bit more emotion into it, to where when they don't know each other, it's a little bit, more cold, and it's just, hey, it's just business. This is what's happening, and they're just doing what they want to do, and it's a robbery. But, again, there's about 6 to 8 seconds that passes once the shooter approaches Liz. You see the weapon come out, and you see Liz see the gun and take a step back. And then in the Nest doorbell camera, it does have audio. You hear Liz say good morning, but then you just hear a bunch of muffled noise, and you really can't tell what's being said. I've had many people that got a hold of that video and that audio through Sergio, and they've tried to clean it up and they've guessed at what is being said, and I've listened to it, and I'm like, I got no clue what they're saying. I don't know how you're getting anything from that. But you can't really tell too if it's a male or female. You just hear muffled voices, and then all of a sudden you hear the gunshots and you hear that terrible scream from Liz. So it is possible that it was personal. It's also possible that the shooter needed to make sure that it was Liz, if it was a hit, as we say, or a targeted homicide. So there's a lot of different possibilities. Again, people like Sergio and her parents knew her, of course, better than me. Unfortunately, I never got to meet and know Liz. I feel like I do with everything, looking through her phone and interviewing so many friends and family. I feel like I know her very well, but of course, I never knew her when she was alive. But I've been told by the Nellies and her friends that they felt when she said good morning, the way she said it, that she did not recognize or know the person walking up. Now, could that maybe person, as they got closer, because maybe they were wearing a wig, she did recognize them and who they were once they got closer, but again, it was dark outside. And she did say good morning when the shooter was walking up the driveway and not too close to her at the time. But again, at least at that time when she said good morning, her family feels that she did not know that person. She would have said it differently or said something different if it would have been someone she knew or recognized.
Right.
So, that's another question that's out there. Did this person know Liz, or did someone that know Liz set this up? That's always been another question that, there's been suspicion on and guesses on, but can't 100% be confirmed. Just like, is the shooter male or female?
Right. I mean, it makes sense. I'm trying to imagine, if I'm having a garage sale and I'm setting up at 7 a.m. and somebody I know sort of unexpectedly shows up at that time, I'm probably not saying good morning. I'm probably saying, hey, Becky, what are you doing here? Like, oh, hey, Chad, why are you here? Like, it wouldn't be, oh, good morning. It sounds like, almost expecting a customer who saw her setting up, coming up to check her out is maybe what that greeting would be about. But yeah, who knows? I mean, it's so hard. Now we're in the world of
It's
kind
super
of trying to
speculation.
guess. Yeah.
Yep.
So, oh man. Well, I feel like, Michael, you kind of answered the questions that we were really concerned with. And I know we've kept you on the phone longer than we said we would. So,
Okay.
so sorry about that, but thank you. Because I think this is the stuff that keeps coming up over and over. And I think Miles and I have gotten a really clear view of what you probably hear all the time in your life living this case. The same questions about the same people. And has this been looked at and has that been looked at? And I think you really helped us just kind of like clear up some of the details on some of the things there. So thank you.
Well, one thing that I can add before we finish is that, my sergeant at the time, Eric Clegg, who is now retired, and kind of like I learned a lot from him. And I try to, now that me being a sergeant homicide and me being the position that he was in, I'm a sergeant of a homicide squad. And I have, detectives that I supervise that are under me now. And I try to emulate and try to, lead the way he did, the way I learned from him. And one advantage he had too was that he was a long-time cold case investigator. And so he looked at murders all the time that were not solved, that were unsolved. And he did that for several years before he became our supervisor, before he retired. And I, would go to him several times during this investigation, and we still talk about it today. I stay in touch with him, and it's like, is there anything we missed? Is there anything we didn't do? Because he got to see all the mistakes made on cases that were unsolved. And he just said, no, I can't think of anything we didn't do. And so one thing I asked him, which is going to be, is the opposite of what's happening with this case, is I said, well, hey, what was the number one thing when you would find a case that's unsolved? What was the number one problem with it? And he goes, oh, I know 100%. He goes, the investigation just stopped. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, it looks like the way they were typing and what they were doing, they were on their way to solving it. And sometimes they had a suspect and then nothing. It just, the investigation stops. And whether they had to move on to another case and got too busy to go back to it, or they promoted, or they retired, or they left homicide and went to another position and no one ever picked it back up. And he said, that's usually what happened, is that the investigation stopped. That's the exact opposite of this investigation,
Right.
The murder of Liz Barraza. The investigation has never stopped. And that's one thing I tell everybody, is that since January 25th, 2019, a week hasn't gone by, or a month hasn't gone by, to where something doesn't happen with this case. Whether it's a tip, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's a supplement typed, whether it's something looked into, I've already done a few grand jury subpoenas and a few warrants this year in 2025, trying to obtain more information. And that's one thing too that he taught me, is that one thing that's on our side now is time. It was against us for a while, but now it can be with us, because relationships change. Someone that was loyal to this shooter now might not be loyal to them, and possibly the shooter could be in prison or could be dead. And so someone doesn't fear, revenge or retribution for them. So they might speak out, say something. And sometimes it takes you finding the right person and asking them, because they're quite not ready to come forward on their own. And so that's why I continue to talk to people like you, and to try to find other avenues to look at and why this murder happened. But I appreciate guys like you that keep this case in the forefront, because we never know who we're going to reach that might know something. And I've talked with the Nellies, and I've come to the conclusion that, we've looked at so many different factors in this case and not been able to come up with a solid suspect, or not been able to charge anybody. I think a lot, it might, to get this case solved, it either is going to come with someone coming forward that, again, it did know the shooter at the time, but doesn't fear them anymore, or is finally, it's kind of got on their conscience and they finally want to do something about it. And possibly they come into financial trouble, and they have there's a huge amount of money reward on this with help with charging a suspect. So it's going to come with that, or it's going to come later on with, better technology. We do have, which I've not ever disclosed, but we do have a few aces up our sleeve with this case. And what I've said is, it's not helping us identify a suspect, but when we do identify one, it's going to help us confirm whether it's them or not. And so as technology gets better, I mean, you look at back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and even early 90s, DNA, didn't exist. Now it does. And so you never know in DNA and other types of things, and especially with technology and AI and all that type of stuff, what's happening nowadays, something might be able to come up here in the next several months or year or 2 years, where all of a sudden, where it wasn't, this information or evidence wasn't attainable or readable, and now it is, because technology has gotten that much better. Or again, old-fashioned, just witness, and someone comes forward and breaks open the case.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I mean, Miles and I both agreed after we spoke with you the first time and spoke to the Nellies that we do have a lot of hope for this case. I mean, it's very, very baffling, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of frustration, I'm sure, for everybody connected to it. But like you said, I mean, to me, it does seem like there's probably more than one person out there who knows what happened and who is behind it. And when you have more than one person, yeah, thank you for saying so. And I think when you have more than one person, and we probably talked about it on the last interview, the chances that somebody's going to turn on the other one go up. And like you said, maybe somebody dies and the other one wants to come forward, or maybe that person who decided to pull the trigger for money gets popped for something else and decides to tell the police who paid them for Liz Barraza to try to get a deal. Like, you never know. I mean, you do this for a living. I'm sure you understand even better than I do how this stuff can work. But it does seem like on a long enough timeline, this can become solvable. I hope, I really hope, especially after meeting Liz's parents and meeting you, I want that.
I do believe this will be solved. And it's with help with people like you guys that are still interested in it. Here, going almost, approaching 7 years later, it's still being talked about. So, and I think it's something that stays in the memory of a lot of people, because I always say this, because, Liz wasn't doing anything wrong. And Liz could easily be, anyone's sister, anyone's wife, anyone's daughter, anyone's friend. And she didn't deserve this. She was living her life at her own home. And this is the type of stuff, these are the type of cases that need to be solved, that to help, people feel better about their safety, because it was something that, shouldn't happen. You shouldn't fear for your safety when you're in your own home, you're on your own property, and you're just conducting a garage sale like so many of us do, and so many of us have done in the past. It just, that's the way I see it. She wasn't a bad person. She wasn't committing crimes. She wasn't dealing drugs. She wasn't having an affair. She wasn't doing anything like that a lot of times causes something like this to happen to somebody. She was living her life and just trying to raise a few dollars more so they could enjoy themselves, on their 5-year anniversary trip. And when something like that happens, it drives home to a whole lot more people. And I believe that's why this case has drawn so much attention to it, because, if it happened to Liz, this could happen to any of us.
Well, I think that's why it's so haunting. And I think you're right. I think that's why the public attention and the passion that people have for getting this solved is there, because you do in some way expect someone who's selling drugs professionally to maybe get killed one day, right? Or someone who's in escort work or doing something that exposes them to dangerous people and in a criminal element. But Liz, I mean, come on, that you said it could be any of us.
I would say almost 50% of the murders we work here in Harris County are drug related. And a lot of times when I would go to the family members where unfortunately their loved one was selling drugs, I'd be like, look, I don't judge what they chose as their profession to, make income and support their family and things like that in themselves. But with every job comes an inherent risk. And if you're dealing drugs, you are, at risk, you're at a heavy risk for something like this to happen, to get robbed or to get shot or to have violence put on you because of what you're doing and what property you have. So, but again, she wasn't doing anything like that. And again, the items, it wasn't robbery motivated. The items that she had out there were not worth anything. It was just a regular garage sale. And she was like, hey, if I can make $20, $50, $100, that's kind of what Sergio said that she said. That's $20, $50, $100 that we don't have to spend out of our own pocket when we go to Disney. So
yeah.
So it's something I'm not this case. I still got a good amount of time left in my career. I'm not leaving homicide. Homicide is where I work, where I belong. When I promoted out of homicide, my whole goal was to get back to homicide. And I was able to do that. And Wyatt worked the case very, very heavily. And we worked together on it when I was a patrol supervisor. But I always told him I would take it back from him when I got back. And fortunately, too, the sheriff's office, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, and my lieutenant, my captain, my major, they are all okay with me still working on this case. And so I'm very fortunate that I'm allowed to do that, even though I'm not investigating cases anymore as a sergeant. But this is still originally mine. I want to keep it. And so I will continue to work on it until it's solved.
Well, I think you're the right guy for the job. I know, Miles and I talked about that last time after we got off the phone with you. We were really, you inspire a lot of confidence, and I know how much it means to you, and I know how much the Nellies believe in you too, because they told us. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for the kind words to us as well. I mean, obviously we want to see us solve here as bad as anybody. And I hope to God we get to have the opportunity to talk about how you cracked this case at some point in the future. That would be the best.
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely.
Well, thank you, Michael. If anything else comes up, I'm sure we'll stay in touch. Otherwise, I can't appreciate, enough you taking the time to hop on with us again. I know everybody's going to really enjoy hearing this.
All right, great. Well, again, thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Michael.
For Liz and Nellie's and for all of us. Appreciate you.
Take care. Talk soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, wow. I'm really glad we got to follow up with Michael Ritchie, huh? What a phone call.
Yeah, a lot of information there, right? Like more than I was expecting him to be able to give. Not that, having already talked to him, I knew how on top of everything he was, but
yeah,
he was a lot more open than I thought he would be able to be about some of the questions,
Yeah, and it went in places that I didn't even expect. I mean, we did retrot a few things we had covered before, but he gave us more detail on it and really kind of just so helpful for him to just come forward and clear up some of these things that have come up over and over in our comments and on other people's YouTube channels too. A lot of people talk about this story, and I think some of the things he was able to comment on are just the repeat questions. And look,
well, I love how analytical his mind is, as an investigator, and how he can look at something like they all got together for that interview, and Sergio said it was a home repair store, whatever the home construction store, and Michael's thinking, why didn't he say Lowe's? Oh, yeah, he probably thinks he's sitting in front of this camera for a network show. He can't say the corporate name. Like that is something that people think about. You know what I mean? So he has to go through all those steps to suspicion, possibilities of why that happened, and it's really interesting to talk to somebody like that and walk through this on a case that's got so much attention and that people have just picked apart, and everyone's just kind of like honing in on these little anomalies, right?
Well, and actually, I'm glad you said that, because one other thing I like about him a lot is that he is in a position on a famous case that is unsolved, that has been his from day one and is still his today. And everybody has an opinion and everybody has their own pet theory and they think this and this. And yet Michael's attitude is really good. And he seems to want people to help and have, public interest and stuff where it's like you could imagine another guy in that position being like really exhausted with everybody feeling like they were coming down on them or that like, oh, you think I didn't look into that? And, like we've all met that person before.
Hey, this case is never going to get solved. It's been this long.
Yeah. Or like you guys are all just armchair detectives. We'll take a walk in my shoes. You'll see how easy it is.
Right.
Like you could see that attitude real easily.
Because look, people, listen, there's people who we don't have to talk about on this video who we still haven't even gotten a reply to our email and our phone calls. So, they won't even say, hey, I can't talk about it. Whereas Michael's getting on and, praising people for being interested and because he knows that that can help get it solved. And he knows that it's going to keep it in the public eye.
Well, he really just feels like an advocate for Liz in that regard. Like he's going to do whatever it takes. He does not mind taking time out of his workday to get on with us again, talk for another hour. Like, that's amazing to me because I know he's busy and I know this guy's out there solving murders while we're running a YouTube channel. And yet he still makes time, but it's not because of you and me. It's because of Liz and her parents, so I just can't take my hat off enough for that dude. I'm really impressed with him. And you're right. He just comes off smart and put together and you can hear the way he thinks through things. And to me, it's like the problem clearly isn't the investigator here. The problem is the evidence. And it's not that like some other guy would have solved it. I think he's the perfect guy for this. It's just a frustrating and difficult case. But I think he'll get it. I mean, like he said at the end, there's some aces up the sleeve. We don't even know what they are. Technology.
It's interesting because he was kind of alluding to tech, and I do feel like AI is going to really change our lives, both in the medical world and I think with investigations. And I don't know if that's what he was talking about, but we have hit on that with the Kessies, where we know that they're looking into using that, on the photos. So it's interesting where we might be headed with some of this new technology that's coming out.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also awesome. It's like it's yeah, it's overwhelming. I don't even know what I want to say about it. I think we all feel that way. We're all scared of AI, but it's also really impressive. And hey, if it's helping solve murders, like you got to be happy about that,
Absolutely. Well, listen, why don't you guys let us know what you think? I mean, did this addendum, did us going back to Michael and sort of clarifying some of these issues and honing in on the questions about Sergio and his dad, has that changed anyone's mind? Did it clear anything up? Or do you guys still feel the way you did? Or, maybe you feel even more strongly now? I'd love to hear from you all in the comments what you guys think.
Yeah, we'd love to know. And I think, it doesn't have to change your opinion necessarily, but maybe some clarity as far as why the investigation feels that way from the official standpoint hopefully helps,
Sorry, start it again. Sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, just, if nothing else, I think, I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. It's all good.
Well, so what it seems like to me right now, just, my armchair detective, is that the family and the investigator might be on different paths as far as, I shouldn't say that because then I'm giving away what the Nelly's kind of said to us.
Yeah, I do feel that way, but I don't think we should say.
But I do, it feels like he's not really looking at Sergio and Oscar. I mean, unless he's fucking
he might be
incredible.
Us, he might be incredible at that. He
might be.
I don't know. But yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm inclined to believe him because he was just so willing to go over it all. Anyway, we shouldn't talk about that. Let's see. What can we say? I guess it's just thank you. You were kind of saying leave it in the comments what you think. Yeah, we love to hear from you guys. Every time you come in with your thoughts, your theories, we do read it and we really appreciate that you guys take an interest, just the way that Michael Ritchie said. I think keeping this alive in the public is important. And more important than shouting down one another's theories is just keeping that stuff going. And I think he's the kind of guy that, reads that stuff too and takes it into account. Some of it I'm sure he's already been through and cleared. But if there's new information, that's what we're looking for. So don't hold back. We want to know. What do you think? And yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll keep bringing you guys information and more interviews on this case as we get them. We're going to keep it alive. And like Michael said, it's the best thing we can do to help out is just keep talking about it.
That's right. And if you like what we're doing and you like the mission of continuing the coverage of these cases and bringing you as close as we can to the real people involved, please give us a like and a subscribe and join us on the quest, because we have a lot more coming on this case and on others.
Thanks, everybody.